We're going to talk about what has happened in Ukraine on this day of the Russian invasion. We'll examine the actions and the strategies, both military and political. Now, if this is your first time watching, my name is Darren Gertis. I'm a professor who's built multiple leadership programs at Charleston Southern University. So we'll also view these events through the lens of leadership. And I also wrote a book about Zelensky called I Need Ammunition, Not a Ride, and you can find it on Amazon.
Okay, so here's what's happening on Thursday, the 7th of July. Let's go over to actually, this is a news event from yesterday, but it happened the day before. The Lithuanians finally got the crowd-funded drone. I talked about this some time ago. Lithuania, if you don't realize, raised they crowdfunded. They just, who wants to donate to Ukraine, and so they crowdfunded $6 million in order to buy a drone from Turkey. It's called a Bayraktar, and it's apparently an awesome drone. The Lithuanian defense minister said, look, one weapon won't win a war, but symbols are extremely important. And, Lithuania has like 3 million people. It's this tiny little country in the Baltic, but they've been one of Ukraine's most ardent supporters. So it's good that it finally landed and it's ready to go. Okay, other news. Early in the morning, or not. This wasn't early in the morning. This was just yesterday, during the day. Um, Zibek Zoli, the Russian ship carrying the stolen Ukrainian grain, was released from so it was the Ukrainian ambassador had asked Turkey to sit on it and go over it and make sure it wasn't stolen grain. The Turkish authorities had released it. We don't know exactly why, but the Turkish ambassador has now been summoned to Ukraine to explain what's going on. So we don't know anything about that yet. Okay, this is what I was talking about in the morning. Early in the morning, Russia warplanes hit Snake Island after Ukrainian forces raise a flag there. Here's what it says in the article. This is Radio Free Europe. Russian military says a Russian jet attacked Snake Island overnight. Troops claim that they raised their flag on a strategic Baltic island. Lieutenant General Igor Konashov, Russian Defense Ministry, said about 5 a.m. several Ukrainian servicemen landed on the island and a motorboat took pictures with the flag. Aircraft of the Russian Aerospace Forces immediately launched a strike with high-precision missiles on Snake Island, as a result of which part of the Ukrainian military personnel was destroyed, he says in the video. Okay, so they gave some context to this. Now, what's interesting is that the Russians, when they left, said that they were giving this as a gift, a goodwill gift, to show that we actually are okay with you taking your grain out of port, and that's not exactly what happened. They got bombed and bombed and bombed again, and so they had to leave. So now. If this was a goodwill gesture, why they're bombing, I don't understand. But here's how it was played in Pravda. Russia stops Ukrainian military from planting Ukrainian flag on Snake Island. But wait a minute, didn't you gift it to Ukraine? And all that the article said was about 5 a.m., that same paragraph that I read earlier. So there was no context or anything with it. And yeah, so that's how it's playing on Pravda. Russian news. Let's look at the deep state map, and you see just a very little bit of movement between 7-6 and 7-7. If you look right here, just in this region, the Russians did take a little ground, not a lot, but a little, and so they continue to on the offensive. Not a big offensive, but on the offensive nonetheless. Okay, Ukraine exacts punishing cost on Russian forces' eastern advance. This is Al Jazeera, who happens to be a pretty decent source. I wouldn't like Al Jazeera for some things, but here they've done a good job. Luhansk Governor Serhiy Haidai said during the past day the invaders opened fire from all available types of weapons. Lysychansk, Privlivia, Volka Koriva, Zolto Tarakova. I'm sorry if I'm slaughtering those names. The last free settlements in Lysychansk. Private houses and villages burn out one by one. So they're still on the march. I think there was one more thing in this particular article that I wanted to highlight near the end. Yeah. So this was really interesting and insightful. There is this guy, Sami Puri, a senior fellow at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. He warned about hasty judgments of Russia's rate of attrition. Now, Russia is just like sending men into the meat grinder. Um, and yeah, that's really what's going on. And we look at that and go, what fools? What are you doing? You're killing your people. He said this: Russia's way of doing war seems very inhumane. Russia seems to be both failing and succeeding at the same time, depending on metrics. Even their successes seem to have involved debacles to begin with. From America's perspective, what Russia has done with its army is suicidal, treasonous even. But there's a very different logic of suffering and loss that's being applied. And I think it's good for us to understand that Russia doesn't seem to care how many people they lose while they take the ground. But they're still winning victories. To the Russian mind, they're kicking butt and taking names, and that's hard for us as Americans to understand with the amount of casualties that they're just willing to endure. Okay, another article by Al Jazeera. Russia's Lavrov is at the G27 meeting. He just arrived. The G20 meeting is going to be going on in the next few days. Nothing really has happened here other than Lavrov's meeting with the Chinese foreign minister on the side. There are a bunch of bilateral meetings on the side. The German foreign minister said it's in the interest of all of us to ensure that international law is respected and adhered to. That's the common denominator. Russia is wantonly violating international law by invading Ukraine and then ignoring the rest of the world. And I get it, as an American, the United States does not like to be told what to do, but there's a difference between not being not liking to be told what to do and hey, don't do that, and well, we're going to do it anyway, and war crimes. I mean, there's a significant difference between just shelling civilians or murdering people wantonly in Bucha and these kind of things. So okay, but again, to the Russian mind, they're fighting war, total war, and yeah, okay. Anyway, um, Boris Johnson, this is the big news of the day. Boris Johnson has resigned, and that is a very sad thing for Ukraine. Boris Johnson was uh, the the leading advocate of defense of Ukraine outside of Ukraine. He clearly head and shoulders above Biden. He was the first on the ground in Kyiv after the Russian forces have withdrawn, and just putting his feet on the ground in Kyiv was a big thing. So Boris Johnson's downfall has been met with delight and ridicule in Moscow, while Kyiv's Volodymyr Zelensky expressed sadness at the resignation. We heard of this news of Johnson's resignation with sadness. Zelensky said, not only me, but also the entire Ukrainian society, which is very sympathetic. Meanwhile, the Russians were talking smack. He doesn't like us. We don't like him either, said Vladimir Putin's spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov. And it got worse. Oh, by the way, and you see this in RT. This is Russian television news. We don't. Johnson doesn't like us, and we don't like him. So, I mean, these same things are covered in Russia. Maria Zakharova, the foreign ministry spokesperson, the moral of the story: do not seek to destroy Russia. Russia cannot be destroyed. You can break your teeth on it and then choke on them. A leading Russian businessman, read oligarch, said that it was an inglorious end for a stupid clown whose conscience would be plagued by tens of thousands of lives in this senseless conflict in Ukraine. Well, it's senseless that he's prolonging this conflict. That's a foregone conclusion that the Russians must win, and that's the way that they're viewing this. And then now, you got to understand how much they like Boris Johnson. There's a poll published in June that showed Johnson was only 3 points behind Zelensky's approval rating. Johnson had a 90% approval rating in Ukraine. Now, he's not running for anything there, but he's 90%. That is incredibly high, and only 3 points behind Zelensky at 93%, where Zelensky has just been just an amazing leader. Okay, Boris Johnson, we don't like him. He doesn't like us. We already talked about that. The clown is leaving. This is another RT article. Boris Johnson is a clown and bears personal responsibility for shelling Russian cities, claimed Vyacheslav Volodin. The clown is leaving. He's a state Duma speaker. I think he's the one, I could be wrong, but I think he's the one that said the Americans ought to remember that uh, Alaska was Russian territory and we might want to reclaim it. He said in so many words. He didn't say it quite like that. He said it a little bit more veiled. But what was he recalled for? Well, he was embroiled in several high-profile controversies, including an investigation revealing that his cabinet officials, including the PM himself, routinely broke COVID-19 distancing rules. Well, frick, I mean, how many of our politicians did that in the United States? Um, I remember the governor of California. I think Nancy Pelosi. I think there's a bunch of people like that that were in that. Liz Truss is to skip the G20 meeting. She's the British Foreign Secretary. She might actually become the new prime minister. And if that happens, that's good for Ukraine because she has been very hawkish, pro-Ukrainian along the way. So she's not attending the G20 because of all of what's going on. She praised Johnson as making the right decision to step down, considered one of the leading contenders for the party leadership. And then, I thought about this and I thought, okay, so Boris Johnson is stepping down, okay? And the British have this really interesting um, way of doing business. Like you're elected for this term, and then if things break against you, they step down and somebody else takes over. In America, we have to wait another, 2.5 years for Biden to be done, and then we get another shot. But the news was nearly 90% of Americans unhappy with the nation's direction. Now, you'll see this on Fox News, but it's really freaky to see it overseas on Russian television where they're saying, like when Fox News says, as a conservative, I go, that's right. When I see it in RT, I'm like, hey, it's almost like the phenomenon of like, I can say anything I want about my brother, but if you say something about my brother, now, come on, it's on. And so that's what's going on. But and so yeah, so 90% of Americans are unhappy with the direction. We know that that's true. That's actually U.S. polling. The performance of Joe Biden is perceived increasingly negative way. Only 36 approving the job he's done. That is generally the case. About the same number approved of Trump, no matter what Trump did. And Congress is doing worse with 78% disapproval rating. That's actually not bad. I mean, Congress has been down into the high 80s disapproval rating at times, into the 90s disapproval rating. We just have a bizarre system like that. Okay, and last thing, Russia hasn't really started anything yet, says Putin. Russia is ready to engage in peace negotiations with Ukraine, President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday, warning that those who reject such prospects should realize that prolonging the ongoing conflict would only make such talks more difficult. Okay, so what's he saying? Well, now that he's grabbed a bunch of land, now once he actually has his land controlled, he wants to have peace talks. He doesn't want to. I mean, what are you going to do? Fight to the last Ukrainian? That's terrible. We don't want to do that. Here's the that language. Putin also said that the West appears actually willing to fight to the last Ukrainian, which is said as a tragedy for the Ukrainian people. Of course, once he has the land, he wants to negotiate and say, yeah, I mean, let's end this thing. He does not want to continue to go on and fight and fight and fight. But he's framing it in a way that looks good for him. They should have realized that and already lost, that they had already lost from the very beginning of our special military operation, because its beginning also means the beginning of a complete breakdown of the American world order. That means international rules, like that they can do whatever they want and not be violated or not be stopped or whatever else. I thought that was a very insightful little bit about both his mentality about the world order, and that once he grabs the area he wants to grab, sure, I'll negotiate peace, as long as I get to keep this land. And that's where the rub's going to be. Okay, that's it for Thursday, July 7th.
Hey, if this video was helpful, hit like to help others find it in YouTube's algorithm. Subscribe so that you can stay informed. And one more thing, if you are moved to contribute to the humanitarian aid for Ukraine, I have a link below for Samaritan's Purse. If you want to give, be sure to give only to reputable organizations. There's a lot of scammers out there. Thanks for your time.